The next thing we're going to look at is configuration. And when I click on this, there's multiple different configuration tabs by, I guess, use case or user type. So microsite is very similar to profile. The only difference there is it doesn't include dates and deadlines, but it is all of your branding colors and then the content for the page. Submission is going to be all of the configuration for the end user submitters themselves. Now, I'm not going to go deep into all of these just for the sake of time. There are eye icons here that do have dedicated training tutorials, as well as another training resource that we'll share back out. Generally speaking, when you launch a program using our templates, you don't need to modify any of these elements here. Some of the key things you may look at, though, is if you want your applicants themselves to create an account or not. We highly recommend that they do create an account for many reasons. It's a better user experience for them. It's better for allowing, saving, and logging out. It gives you a bit better tracking capability. But there may be a use case where you want to disable that and not require an account creation. That's where you can go ahead and toggle this radio button next to it. You can also start to set limitations on the number of submissions allowed per applicant. So for many organizations, you're only allowed to submit one time from your user account. In this case, we're allowing up to 400. So if you want to modify that, you certainly can. This other number here is how many team members. So Reviewer does offer a collaborator functionality. It's a way for the submitter themselves to add teammates or collaborators to their entry form who will have the exact same privileges as them. And so if you want to set a cap for how many they're allowed to have, you can, or you can turn that off completely. The last thing here I would look at would be the submitter portal instructions. So after an applicant applies, they get dropped into the backend, portal. More times than not, that's for view only, although you will notice that there is a section down here for allowing them to edit their submission after submitting up until a certain day and time, as well as if they're in a certain submission status. So this content controls the page, the content on the instructions. And then this section, editable submission statuses, is going to configure what submission status allows for editing capability. The last thing I want to look at here are the in-progress submission reminders. So in Reviewer, you can configure email templates, which I will show you. And one of those is an in-progress auto reminder message that goes out. That can happen to both the applicants themselves, or if you're using the supplemental form feature for an external submitter, such as a reference. And this checkbox turns this feature on or off. And then there's two different kind of frequencies here. The reminder start frequency is how long after the initial creation of their form to start sending reminders. So in this example, 5 days after they start, they get their first reminder. And then the second date here is going to be for there on after. So every 2 days after, they're going to get reminders until they finish their submission. The next thing we'll look at is the judge configuration. Again, largely speaking, you don't need to worry about too many of these settings here unless there's something unique about yourself. This is an area, really all of these configuration, our team will run with you through in your configuration call. It typically makes more sense for our team to kind of ask you a series of questions to figure out, like, does it actually make sense to deviate from kind of your standard process? But one of the things here is going to be submission statuses presentable to reviewers. So whenever you're ready to begin the review process, you have to make the submissions available to a review team. And there's a couple steps that go into play. They have to be in a certain status, which is what we're actually controlling here. So in this example, only those that are in the accepted status will be scoreable. You also have to have, active judging dates and deadlines. There has to be a scorecard. And of course, they have to be assigned to judges to begin scoring. The other things to look at here are going to be what's available to the review team. So by default, most organizations will not share back scores back to the applicant. With that said, there are some organizations that offer feedback. And so once the scoring is complete, they actually may anonymously share back the results back to the applicants so they can see why they were scored the way that they were for self-development. A couple other notes at the bottom here are some of the more advanced judging functions, which you'll find more in the judging tutorials, and is setting limitations on judging itself. So you can start to set, how many times you want a submission to be scored. In this case, it's 5. And what happens here is the system has a feature where it can automatically assign all submissions to your entire review committee. But once the submission's been scored exactly 5 times, it then falls off that list and nobody else can score them. If you have an alternative judging process, either everybody scores everybody, if you are manually assigning certain reviewers to certain applicants or other things like that, you can turn this off, which by default it is, and you can go ahead and do another alternative model. One other best practice here is the randomized judge results. So many users will work down the list top to bottom. So as a judge, when they come in, everybody scores the same applicant first, the last applicant last. And what ends up happening there is the last applicant is then introduced to comparison bias, and they're actually being scored on the same scale as all the other applicants. So to combat that, you can randomize that list. So when the review team comes in, they still see the same submissions assigned to them, but the order from one judge to another will be different. The last thing we're going to look at here is the search functions. And so both from an applicant perspective, admin, and the reviewer team, you can set and turn on or off different columns that are available to them in their submission listing. This will make far more sense when you start to actually look at that section. But again, as I've said numerous times, every single section of reviewer has very dedicated training and resources around it. Great. So we've kind of set up our dates and deadlines. We've set up some of the high level configuration. Again, there's a strong chance you didn't touch any of these. You just used the out of the box tools. The next thing we want to look at is the forms themselves.